Hey guys, this is Miss A, and today we are talking about point of view. Now, point of view is a topic that you've probably heard about in school before, but it's one of those that is really confusing until you get it. So you may be looking at this video going, oh my gosh, I know this already, I understand what this is. And if that's the case, then just try to stick with me and hopefully you'll learn something new. But if you're sitting here going, I've done point of view before and I just don't understand it, it doesn't make sense to me, try really hard to pay attention to this, and if you find yourself getting confused or lost, try to just focus in a little bit more, because I promise once you get it, it clicks. This is one of those topics that's really confusing until you get it, and then as soon as you get it, you wonder why you ever had trouble with it at all. So hopefully if you don't get it, today might be the day that you finally understand it. So before we start, let's set it up in our notebooks. You should be on the next blank page in your reader's notebook. Go ahead and set up point of view as your title and put the date at the top. Make sure you're on the left hand side of the page. So before we get started, let's just make sure we all kind of have the same definition, so we're all on the same page with what point of view is. When we talk about books, we're basically saying it's who's telling the story. So the point of view is it being told by a character? Is it being told by a narrator? Who in the story are we seeing it through? Whose eyes are guiding us through the world? Now, if you are a gamer, if you play a lot of video games, this is already probably a really familiar topic to you. If you've ever heard the terms first person, second person, third person, like in video games they'll have ones that are called first person shooter games where like you're the person holding the gun walking around through the game. It's the exact same thing with books. So keep that in the back of your mind as you're watching this. Now, I could sit here and give you these notes, but Flocabulary does a much better job than I do of helping you remember these things. So I'm going to show you the Flocabulary video for point of view. While you're watching this, I want you to see if you can come up with what three types there are. First person, second person, third person. And see if you can kind of tell me in your head what is first person, what is second, and what is third. Please don't take notes during this because it gets hard to go back and write in your own. But if you want to jot down right at the top or over in the margin what you think they are, and then you can fill them in for real when I give you them all together. Okay, so let's take a look.
Every story has a narrator, and every narrator has a different point of view. Which point of view is yours? Let's go! Everybody wants to know my point of view. First person is me, second person is you. Third person is he, third person is she. Everybody wants to know my POV. Everybody wants to know my point of view. First person is me, second person is you. Third person is he, third person is she. Everybody wants to know my POV.
Hey yo, knock knock, who's there? Narrator, who? Narrator, who gonna tell the story from a point of view? Every story's written in a certain voice. When you're writing, you need to make a choice. First, second, or third person, POV. The first person is all about me, or we, like we climbed the tree. I closed my eyes and I felt the breeze. I might be unreliable if I don't tell the truth. Now let's switch the point of view to you. In the second person, you're in a taxi. You're wondering how you got there exactly. The third person is he or she. He walked down the street and he saw the queen. She was dressed hip like it wasn't a thing. That's the third person, take it from him. Third person narration could be objective, omniscient, or from a limited perspective. Can the narrator see in everyone's thoughts? Narrating omnisciently like a boss.
Everybody wants to know my point of view. First person is me, second person is you. Third person is he, third person is she. Everybody wants to know my POV. Everybody wants to know my point of view. First person is me, second person is you. Third person is he, third person is she. Everybody wants to know my POV. All right now, check your notes. Tell me which POV is in each quote. I was born with water on the brain. That's
first person.
He looked up into Father Wolf's face and laughed. That's
third person.
We didn't always live on Mango Street. That's
first person.
Sophie closed her eyes and lay quite still. That's
third person.
Your feet are now stuck in green slime. That's
second person.
In the hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. That's
third person.
It made me so sick I almost fell out of the tree. That's
first person.
You're thinking this wasn't the way it was supposed to go. That's
second person.
My name is Katniss Everdeen. I'm 17 years old. That's
first person.
Everybody wants to know my point of view. First person is me, second person is you. Third person is he, third person is she. Everybody wants to know my POV. Everybody wants to know my point of view. First person is me, second person is you. Third person is he, third person is she. Everybody wants to know my POV.
All right, so 3 points of view: first person, second person, third person. Hopefully you've got a better idea now of what those are. Let's take a look at first person, obviously. First person is any time it's told through a character's eyes. So a character in the story is the one who's telling it to you. There are going to be key words with any point of view that are going to clue you into what it is. With first person, you're going to see I, me, my, we, our. Any of those words that you would use to describe yourself are the words you're going to see there. So like I told you earlier, if you play video games or if you ever watch videos where you can like almost see it through the character's eyes, that's exactly the same thing when we're talking about with point of view here. So watch this. Notice how in this next video, you're seeing it as if you're the one doing it. That's first person point of view.
Not exactly what you think. See you in the room next door. Your feet float above the floor. Dress torn above your knees, like you've owned it for centuries. Dots and dashes on the
Right? So in that one, you were the person who was actually surfing on the board. That's first person when you're seeing it through the eyes of the character who's in the story. Now, second person is one that doesn't actually get used very often, but it's when the author is talking directly to the reader. So there's a narrator there, but they're not really talking about themselves, they're talking about you. What you're mostly going to see this in is any sort of like an advertisement or a how-to or an instructional guide. When they say something like, you should do this, you should come to the Bahamas, you should buy a Snuggie. Anytime you're seeing these things that are trying to sell you something and they want to talk to you as the audience, that's when you're going to see second person. So watch this next part and see if you can figure out why it's second person.
Same time. Some instructors will stress that you got to do that super fast, but the problem is you're often going to fall over. So my suggestion is to take your time. Keep your hands on the rail, get that front foot up, your heel down, and then your back foot on, and that heel down, and then take your time standing up and really stay stable. There's no point in rushing your pop-up if you're just going to fall off right away. It's much better to leave your hands on the board longer. Keep them on there until you get both feet up and you really feel solid, and then slowly stand up, and that will guarantee that you get a longer ride.
Right? So you can do this, your back foot, you shouldn't rush your pop-up. All of those you words where it's aimed at the reader is second person. Third person is one that we actually get used a lot, and that's where a narrator is telling the story. So you're going to see characters' names used, or you're going to see things like he, she, them, it, her, his, those kinds of words. Now, the thing with third person that gets a little bit complicated is it can be what we call limited or omniscient. Limited would be where you're really only following one character. Like if you've ever read the Harry Potter books, you would think because they're about Harry Potter that they're first person and Harry's telling the story. But it's not. If you read it, it says Harry did this, Harry went here. But we very, very closely stick to Harry. We see what he sees, we're following him along, we can kind of know what's going on in his head, we hear his thoughts, even though we're not actually inside of his head. But he's the only one we know that. We don't know what Hermione's thinking. We don't know what, the professors are thinking. We only really get to see inside of Harry's head. As opposed to what we call omniscient, omni means all, so it's all-knowing. If the author is omniscient, you can kind of get a feel for what's inside of every character's head. We would know what Harry was thinking, but we would also know what Hermione was thinking. We would know what Ron was thinking. You get to know all the different characters and what's going on inside their head. So third person can be either of those. So again, when you're standing sort of back away from the story and the narrator is the one who's telling you what's going on, that's what we call third person. Kind of like what's going on in this video.
we may hold on tight to the memories from nights like the one that might pass tonight. Someday we may hold on tight
to the memories from nights like the one that might pass. Someday we may hold on tight to the memories from nights like the one that might.
Right? So in the first video, we were the person on the surfboard. We were experiencing it right there with the person doing it. In that one, we were back away. We were looking at it and sort of describing it from back in the way. So you could almost think about it. If we were going to describe the first video, we would say, I caught the wave, I rolled down, I did this, I crashed. In that last one, since we're back away from it, we would describe it as he did this, he caught the wave, he crashed as he went over it, right? Now, one thing that gets really, really tricky with point of view, and this is where a lot of kids mess up, in reading where you've got people talking to each other, you've got what's called dialogue, and it's going to be in quotations. Ignore it. Ignore it, ignore it, ignore it. Pretend like it's not there. Cross it out if you need to. You can't look at what's inside the quotation marks because they're quoting what someone else is saying. And everybody, no matter what point of view it is going to refer to themselves as I. They're going to refer to somebody else as he. And if they're talking to somebody, they're going to call them you. Right? So even if it's written in first person, they're going to write in dialogue the same way. So you've got to ignore it and look at what's not in quotations to be able to figure it out. So let me give you an example. I've always wanted to learn how to surf, Rachel said with a grin as they walked out onto the beach. She braced herself against the wind that pushed against her board. Ugh, I don't know about this, Penny responded, squinting in the sun. We're going to look ridiculous. Rachel, we have no idea what we're doing. So would this be first or second or third person? The problem is if I look at what's right here at the beginning, the very first word in here is what? I. So if I'm looking there, it's going to make it look like it's first person. I've always wanted to surf. I don't know about this. We have no idea what we're doing. But the problem is, anytime somebody is talking, they're going to refer to themselves as I. Rachel is not going to say, Rachel has always wanted to learn how to surf, because she's talking about herself. She's going to say I. So let's cross that out right there. Forget about all of the quotation marks, and let's look at what's not in those quotations. Rachel said with a grin as they walked out onto the beach. She braced herself against the wind that pushed against her board. This is written in third person. Rachel, when she talks about herself, she's going to say, I've always wanted to know how to surf. But if you only focus on what's not in the parentheses, it's going to be really obvious that it's third person, right? Now, if I wanted this to be first person, I'd honestly have to rewrite it. I'd have to say, I've always wanted to learn how to surf. I said with a grin as I walked out onto the beach. I braced, myself against the wind that pushed against my board. Now it's in first person, but I've got to change it to get it there. Do you see the difference? You've got to look at what's not in the quotations to be able to figure it out. Okay, so go back over to your notes. Go ahead and on whatever's left of your page, you need to label it 1 through 10. If you can do that on 10 separate lines, that's fine, but you can also do 2 columns like this to make it fit. So, I am going to give you a couple of sentences to try this out with on your own, 10 sentences to be exact. For each of those sentences, you need to tell me what point of view it is, and you need to be able to pick out a couple of words that led you to knowing it. So, for example, if I were looking at this first one here, let's do the first one together. I want to go shopping. I. Well, look at your notes. Which one is I? If someone is talking about themselves, I, the narrator is the person in the story, then it is first person, right? So on my paper, I would put first, and I would put the word that told me that, I. So first dash I. Then let's look at number 2. They were very tired. They. Okay, well, they would mean not me, but somebody else. So they is like more than one other person. So they, other people would be, look at your notes, third person, right? So I would put third person and they. They was the key word that gave it away, right? So 3 through 10, you should be able to do on your own. Go ahead and pause the video here and go down and look at them. Now, hold on, sorry, one more thing. Some of these, as you go through, are going to have more than one keyword. Write down all the keywords you see. And especially when you get down here, when you've got dialogue in these last 3, be very careful that you're looking at the right part. Okay, go ahead and pause and figure these out. Okay, so if you're watching the video at this point, you should have all 10 of these on your paper. Okay? So I'm going to give you the answers, and just like we do normally with these videos, I'm not interested in you getting every single one right. I'm interested in seeing what you did. So if you got it wrong, do not erase it and try to change it. You don't lose points for it. I just want you to know what you got right and wrong. So put a check, put an X. If you get it wrong, then just write out to the side which one it actually was, but you don't lose points for doing that. You lose points if it's obvious that you changed your answer, right? So take a look. First person, third person. Number 3 was first person, 4 was second, 5 was third, 6 was third, 7th was second, 8 was third, 9 was third, and 10 was third. Now, if you had trouble here at the end with 8, 9, and 10, you needed to make sure you were looking at the right part. Once we take away all of those pieces of dialogue, we were left with she yelled, Mark said, I ask. She, third, Mark, third, I first, right? So just a second, take that. If you need to pause it to get those down, feel free to. Okay, so your real assignment from here, you've already kind of done half of it, is to do this again, but with a little bit longer piece and in a little bit more detail. So there should be in your folder a little half sheet of notebook paper for point of view. If I didn't give this to you already, if you don't have this worksheet, raise your hand and get it, because trust me, you don't want to have to copy all of this stuff by hand. So on your worksheet, you should see 4 or 5 different little pieces of text. For each of those pieces of text, you need to do 3 things. First, you need to go ahead and decide which point of view it is. You're going to have to read it to be able to do that. But once you've read the little excerpt, tell me, is it first person, second person, or third person? Now, real quick, when you're looking at this, I have purposefully made some mistakes already on my sheet, so please don't try to just copyright on what I'm doing. You're going to get it wrong. So let's say, for example, that I decided this one was first person. I would put first person there in the middle. Right? But I also want to see where you're getting your information from and what's leading you to believe that. So over within the text, I want you to highlight the keywords that show the point of view. So those keywords you wrote down, I, he, they, we, you, characters' names, all of those kinds of things, I want you to highlight in the text. If you don't have a highlighter of your own, there should be one in the baggie underneath your seat. If you can't find a highlighter, it's perfectly fine to just circle the words. As long as they're marked, I should be able to follow along. And then last but not least, you need to answer the question that goes along with it. Please make sure you notice that the question for each one is slightly different. So you need to read the question in the box and make sure you're answering that question only. You also need to make sure you're answering the question completely. For example, this first one says, whose thoughts do we know in the passage? Explain how you know. So if all you give me is a one-word Bob, we know Bob's thoughts, I'm not going to give you credit. You need to explain how you knew that Bob's thoughts were the ones we were following, right? So take one more look if you need it. At this point, you should have your notes and everything over on the left-hand side, and you should have your half sheet of paper glued in on the right, ready to go and ready to fill out. If there's anything here that you need to go back and fix up, feel free to do it now. Okay, so one last time, let's review real quick. Your job from here is to complete the worksheet. To be able to do that, you're going to need to read each passage, decide on the point of view, highlight the key word in each of them that prove it's that point of view, and then answer the question that goes along with it. One thing I want you to notice, if you don't have this in front of you, get it in front of you now. Look down at the very last part. The last example asks you to use your own reading book. You're looking in your book and copying a line or two that show the point of view, deciding what point of view your book is written in, and then answering the question about it. Okay, so make sure you've got your book with you as well, ready to go. Okay? If you've got questions, make sure you raise your hand and ask and get help. Otherwise, good luck and have fun.